Each year, 1.7 million youth will experience homelessness across America's cities, suburbs, and rural communities. Approximately 5,000 at-risk youth will die to assault, illness, or suicide trying to survive on the streets.
The youth will stay in abandoned buildings, parks, and other unsuitable locations and face ongoing exposure to drugs, alcohol, human trafficking, sexual assault, unwanted pregnancies, and even suicide.
Youth become homeless due to family instability, systemic policies, residential instability, and extreme disconnection from education and employment.
Through virtually no fault of their own, they face abuse and neglect, and commonly the cause is parental substance abuse and/or conflicts over gender identity. 40% of homeless youth identify as LGBTQ.
Many youth who have lived through these situations and have ended up homeless have experienced significant trauma that needs to be addressed, and as they develop the independence and self-sufficiency to be able to move to permanent housing. Stand Up for Kids is an organization founded in 1990 whose mission is ending the cycle of youth homelessness. This mostly volunteer-run organization was founded by concerned individuals who saw a need to help their community. Originating in San Diego, Stand Up for Kids is rapidly expanding with 18 chapters across the country.
We are Stephanie Caceres, Alyssa D'Amato, and Susan McNally-Wild, and we're discussing standupforkids.org.
Stand Up for Kids' final goal is to get youth to accept help and change the behaviors to end youth homelessness through open, straightforward counseling, mentoring, and life skills training. Their goals over the next 3 years is to increase youth housed by 20% yearly, open 3 new outreach centers, and launch a youth entrepreneurship program.
Stand Up for Kids is a 501c3 national nonprofit organization trying to reach 3 distinct audiences: at-risk youth, policymakers, and their donors and volunteers.
The organization is almost entirely composed of volunteers and, in some cases, a small office staff. Some of their newer programs have fewer than 10 core volunteers, whereas others have upwards of 100 volunteers. Each has a leadership team to maintain strategic direction, coordinate its programs, support volunteers, fundraise, collaborate with other community organizations, and ensure they have the supplies to serve their youth.
Stand Up for Kids mainly reaches their intended audience by going straight to the source and approaching homeless youth on the streets. From there, they build relationships with them and inform them of the homeless centers and services offered. The organization uses social media to communicate to stakeholders such as potential donors, whose funds are able to keep the organization alive. Individuals, charitable foundations, businesses, and other organizations serve as a financial pillow for Stand Up for Kids. When it comes to the content of efforts by Stand Up for Kids, 4 core services revolving around the organization's mission come into play. These 4 core services are street outreach, outreach centers, housing support, and mentoring. To communicate these 4 core services, different approaches are used. Street outreach counselors go directly to the streets to reach homeless youth. Volunteers often walk around in areas that are known to have large populations of homeless youth to distribute materials such as food and clothing. Outreach centers provide basic human needs where homeless youth can go to eat, shower, send mail, make phone calls, and other basic necessities. Housing support helps homeless youth get apartments and provides them with materials to help kickstart their independence. Mentoring sessions include creating goal plans and ways to prioritize and execute those plans.
The ideal outcome is to help homeless youth get on their feet and build a brighter future for themselves. Through Stand Up for Kids, they are nurtured with many opportunities that will ultimately give them a fair chance. Homeless youth who take advantage of these services will come out the other end feeling loved and having a support system while going from surviving to thriving, as stated in the organization's vision.
In 2018, the shelter's volunteers in Chicago counted 5,450 homeless people in all of Chicago, 1,215 of whom were children. But the Chicago Coalition for the Homeless believes that figure is significantly undercounted. Through a combination of estimated census data, they believe there to be 86,000 homeless people, roughly 20,800 of whom are kids in Chicago. Stand Up for Kids is here to empower homeless and at-risk youth toward lifelong personal growth and to create in these youth a sincere belief in themselves through open, straightforward mentoring and counseling and youth skills training. As we look at the course materials studied to date and we apply them to this case study, we see that the first overlap comes from the Ebola case study, where they used a combination of media and on-the-ground outreach. And we contend that standupforkids.org is doing a good combination of those efforts as well. Second of all, we see that they framed the problem and not the youth as the problem. So they did a very successful job of framing the break the cycle message, which makes this of interest to everyone and pulls at the heartstrings. Lastly, we see that they used crowdsourced stories from their youth on their webpage, and they're only lightly curated, each in a different effective format. As we apply the readings to look at what standupforkids.org might do differently going forward, we see an example of where they might use, from the Ebola case study again, media campaigns to reach the youth where they can find them online. Second of all, we might see some youth-led outreach and youth-led methodologies a la Fiere's participation theory. And then lastly, if the ultimate goal of these campaigns is advocacy, we might see them add some kind of a portal or message around advocacy to foster policies. So this concludes our case study on standupforkids.org.